For some of you, reading the Carp is going to be a little bit confusing. It doesn't feel as much like a poem as it does a really disjointed story. One of the things I really want to draw attention to is the way the stanzas are written. It seems like a stream of consciousness, and the speaker is telling us random snippets of their life. The important thing is to start at the beginning and notice the little details throughout. The speaker starts out by telling us that the father was a school principal. Remember, this is probably happening sometime during the Cultural Revolution, and later on, principals and intellectuals were targeted as being anti-patriotic. The speaker tells us that on the day they were born, their father caught a 20-pound carp, and instead of keeping it for himself, he generously gave it to the school kitchen so all the teachers and students could taste it. This for us indicates a lot of things happening in this poem. Initially, the child sees herself as a lucky symbol, as someone who happened to be born on the same day their father caught a 20-pound carp. And again, this little snippet about her father and how he shared his carp instead of keeping it for himself and his family tells us a lot about the generosity of the father. The next stanza tells us about the setting, about mountains, and how she yearned for the ocean. This again sets up this idea that there will be a dichotomy, two opposing forces, the mountains versus the ocean. The speaker notes that they were named Cloud. They go on to tell us that when Confucius, who is a great important historical figure in China, when Confucius had a child, he received a carp, and so Confucius named his son Carp. Again, we have this parallel weaving throughout Carp being caught on the day the speaker is born, and Confucius naming his son Carp. We go on to a proverb where it says, "The wise say a carp leaping over the dragon gate is a lucky sign." So we have this concept of the carp being lucky. My father named me Cloud because I was born in the year of the dragon. There are always clouds following a dragon. Confucius's son died an early death. My father has only 3 daughters. So this starts to tell us that we can question this concept of the carp being a lucky sign. Confucius's son, who was named Carp, died young, and the speaker's father only has 3 daughters. And remember, in China, it was considered very important to have sons. The child goes on to say that when they were 3, they wandered the campus, and they passed the room where the father was imprisoned. He whispered to me, hid a message in my little pocket. It was his will that I should grow up a strong woman and find justice for him. So here we can tell that something has happened. In 3 years from when the time the speaker was born, their father is now suffering and imprisoned. They caught me. My father was beaten to near death. Some of them were students, whose parents were peasants. Some of them were teachers, who used to be his friends. They had tasted the carp. Again, this concept of the carp comes up, and when we read that sentence, they had tasted the carp, we get this sense of betrayal. The principal had shared his good fortune with these people, and they turned around less than 3 years later and beat him nearly to death. It has been recorded that Confucius could not tell the difference between millet and wheat, and was thus mocked by a peasant. This peasant became a big hero, representing the wisdom of the people, thousands of years after Confucius's death. Again, we have this really interesting dichotomy. Confucius is considered one of the wisest people in world history, and particularly in Chinese history. It goes on to say later on that he's mocked by a peasant who became a big hero. This is definitely an allusion to Mao Zedong, and how Mao Zedong became more wise than Confucius, which is very contradictory to Chinese thought. My father still goes fishing, the only thing that seems to calm him. The mountains are sleeping waves. My father catches very small fish. My mother eats them. My friends laugh at me when I tell them once upon a time my father caught a carp weighing 20 pounds. So we know eventually the father is released from prison, but he's not the same. He fishes, it calms him. Note that the person who eats the fish is the mother. Someone he can trust who's not going to betray him, like students and teachers and peasants, but someone who loves him. And notice that the speaker is telling us that they are mocked when they speak of the carp, when they speak of the past and what was supposed to be lucky, because her family has had such horrible, horrible misfortune, it's impossible for them to have ever had any luck, and therefore to have ever caught a 20-pound carp.